Welcome to Controlling the Mind and the Machine podcast. I am your host, Erica Chadwick. Thanks for stopping in. Thanks for listening. I do love a good listen. Reasons that you should be listening to the podcast. One, because this is good for you. It's good shit. Okay, we're talking about stories. We're talking about solutions. And, we're preventing mental unhealth. So next time you have some detail to do and you are just like bored, listen to one of the episodes. It's cool. Just grab one. I talk about, look at the descriptions, find one that makes sense, and, normalize your experience. That's a really big gift that you can give yourself, is to listen to somebody else who has a shared experience that you do, so that you can remember that you're not as special as you think you are. Like, your problems aren't as unique as you think they are. And I only say that not because I want to talk shit to you, but because that's going to help you in the long run. A lot of times when, you're not talking about what's going on and you sort of keep it all bottled up and you keep it to yourself, you begin to just have these conversations with yourself instead of other people. And those conversations are going to be really one-sided. They're all coming from your perspective, which is limited. So when you listen to other people's stories from different locations across the US, then you get to realize that, oh, hey, somebody else is going through what I'm going through, maybe, and maybe they're doing something different that, could just really be like, oh, that's what I needed to do. That's what I needed to hear. So I encourage you, listen to the podcast, fix yo shit. Prevent shit from happening in the future. That's the whole point of this stuff. Because when y'all were in the academy, nobody set you up and was like, hey, you know what? You're going to have these really gnarly dreams and memories that pop into your head that you're going to be like, whoa, my God. You're going to feel some physical symptoms when you're stressed out or when you have anxiety. You're going to think really negatively after a ton of time because this shit's really hard. You didn't have that conversation, okay? So some of you are having to deal with it after the fact. So here we are. It is what it is. It is what this is. Do you watch Chris D'Elia? If you are not, go to Netflix and search this dude. He is so freaking funny. Oh, so good. What's going on? Oh, you know what? You can head over to Instagram because I just posted a video. Actually, I'll upload it to YouTube. So just obviously you're already subscribed to the channel, so you'll get the notification when I make the video. Duh. However, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, do it already. But check back. I'll be posting a shoulder stretch video that you can do next time you drop somebody off at jail and you're like, oh man, my shoulders hurt. Oh, been in my patrol car. You can just do this little stretch. You can hop out of your little car and stretch against your car. Open up your shoulders. It makes a ton of sense. Okay, so my guest today is Officer Andy. Officer Andy is from Southern California, and we actually didn't know each other prior to this phone call. So that's how easy it is. I want to hear about your story. We can become friends. I can fucking talk to a wall. I can talk to anybody. We'll make it interesting. But anyways, so Officer Andy and we actually did one of my TacMobility one-on-one sessions prior to us talking. I wanted to conduct the session, and then I wanted to interview somebody so that I could share that shit with you guys, so that they could give you their experience, because for the month of May, I'm doing that shit for free. That means that it can be kind of catered around your schedule. So if you have a preference, let me know. If you're I work swing shift, blah, 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 whatever. Okay. So it's It's modeled around your schedule, but it's a way for you to kind of do the work now so that you don't have to pay later. Okay, so it's talking about some of your, some of the things that are kind of like plaguing your thoughts, some of the things that you've been like ruminating about. It helps sort of address some of those things. It helps you relax. I show you how to, regulate your own nervous system so that your body's not feeling some of those, anxious feelings. Y'all know what I'm talking about. I do not need to be preaching to the choir here. Or I am preaching to the choir. You guys know what I'm talking about. So, yeah. I literally forgot what I was talking about. So we're just going to move along. I also didn't write a ton of this down. My bad. We talk about anger a lot in this episode. A lot. Not a ton. Enough. Here's the deal. A lot of you are struggling with outbursts of anger. That's I have a survey that I send out, and one of the things that most officers experience, like the stress symptom that is most commonly experienced, is an outburst of anger. Okay, so if that is you, if that's what's happening, you're not alone. You're not alone. That shit is just kind of piling up inside of you, and it's just being a ticking time bomb is common, and it doesn't always have to be that extreme either, right? You don't have to be like that guy that's always like volatile, but it can be something that you deal with silently, right? There's a lot of people that sort of disengage and sort of, they're quiet about what they're feeling, whatever. So when those types of things come up, what do you do? Well, if you're like me, you break your kids' Nerf guns. But not just one, 3. 3 Nerf guns. You're not alone is my point. So Officer Andy and I, we talk a little bit about that. Actually, one of my previous guests, he talked about trashing this wreath that his wife made. So like, it's happening, you guys. We're all just sort of like losing our shit every once in a while. Totally normal. But if that's something that is kind of popping up into your awareness, like you're like, oh, maybe I don't need to do that so much. We talk a little bit about it, but I'm also going to be doing a little, some how-tos this next week on the Instagrams. So I'm going to give you guys some tips on how to manage some of that anger, how to deal with it so that you're not like just exploding everywhere or holding it all in, saving it for a rainy day. All right. So, shout out to Controlling the Mind of the Machine podcast sponsor, Ravencrest Tactical. If you guys don't own one of these knives yet, I mean, what are you even doing? Are you even doing your job right? Are you even doing life right? You might not be, but you can be. Head on over to ravencresttactical.com. Enter coupon code KnifeGirl20. That's going to get you 20% off. Crazy town. You have no excuses now. Ready to cut them boxes. Thanks so much for supporting Controlling the Mind and the Machine. We appreciate you, Ravencrest Tactical. Best warranty in the biz. Wear it, tear it, use it, kill it, smash it. All right, y'all. Here we go. Episode number 6, Officer Andy, Southern California. I have with me today Deputy Andy from Southern California. I had to practice what I was going to say because we're on this podcast. If you do an interview with me and you want to remain anonymous, you can. Actually, I don't even technically know what department you work for, so it is anonymous in real life.
It is. It works out.
And I don't know your last name. So this really is all the information I have. Okay. So, first I want to say thank you for giving me so much of your time today. I was like, I'm going to take like 2 hours of your time. He's like, I don't know you. This should be interesting. Okay. So Andy and I just had a TacMobility one-on-one private session. We just did it. I wanted to do the one-on-one with someone, with an officer, and then do the interview afterwards and talk about it and see how that sort of fits into your guys' experience, because I want to make sure that what I'm creating and what I'm producing is effective and helpful and relevant, because I know that there have been a lot of people who have like tried to do it and it just like doesn't work. Okay. So, Andy, tell me about your career. So I don't know anything about your career.
Well, I've been doing it for the last 14 and a half years. I did 2.5 years working the jails, and then the last has all been street time.
The jails.
Yeah, that was not what I wanted to do, right? But it's what you get assigned. So knocked it out, got done, got out to the streets, and then that was interesting. Worked some interesting places. I do special teams now, so. That's it in a nutshell.
So you graduated from the academy and you went to work the jails. So my perspective of what it's like to work in a jail is that it's awful. Like,
that's pretty accurate.
Okay.
I didn't like it. I hated it. I thought it was gross. I mean, you got all those dudes packed in there that can't play well with others to begin with. So now, we're all there together. Not my funnest time by any stretch of the imagination. It was good though. In the grand scheme of things, it was good. I'd gotten done with school and then came to the academy, so it was good as far as like working on the people skills and understanding that customer base.
So on average, how long are those people who are in jails? I don't know much about jails. Like in my head, there's jail and then there's prison, right? Like jail. Right. Like, is that still true?
Yes. Absolutely. It still works that way.
Okay, so with jail, what's like the average time that someone is there? And like, are there like reoccurring people, or you're just like, I fucking know this guy, or I know this girl?
Yeah, all the time. I saw most of the same people over and over and over again when I worked the jails. And then you can get what used to be, as far as the county's concerned, the max sentence is the county lid is like a year. However, if they're still fighting their case and everything like that, I mean, there was guys that were there the whole time I was there.
What?
Because they're still fighting their case and doing all that kind of stuff. So they're there until they get sentenced sometimes.
So I'm just going to kind of like jump in. One of the common stress symptoms are persistent negative beliefs. How do you work in my mind, working in that kind of environment sort of like sets you up to have that, where like day in and day out, like what's the good that's happening? Like what's like the light at the end of the tunnel? Like how do you think that impacts that?
For me, the light was getting out to the streets. Knowing that there's a finite amount of time that I'm going to be there. At the time, most of the guys were doing between 2 and 5 years, and I got lucky and got out in 2.5. And then there's kids now that have been there 5, 7, 8 years before they're getting out to the streets. So like that, for me, that was the biggest thing, knowing that it was coming sooner than later. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how the kids are dealing with it now. Being locked down for 5 to 8 years, you're losing all your academy training, you're losing, that basic cop knowledge of shit before you're coming out. So now...
Oh, I didn't think about that.
Yeah, so now it's a lot harder with, and being an FTO and then seeing the kids when they get out there, the new guys, sorry. Seeing the new guys come out, they've lost everything, so we're damn near starting all over again, which becomes extremely frustrating.
So how does the environment of being in a jail impact your thoughts? Like, if when you go to work, it's not fun, like, how do you make that switch when you come home to be like, oh, I'm going to leave that there? My life isn't actually jail. Like, does that happen easily?
I mean, it's been a long time ago now. Yeah, I just remember being pretty pissy all the time. I'm not gonna lie, like it was not a happy time for me, you know, because you're locked down with them for 12 hours, you know, and then starting out, usually, you know, you're getting your life started, you're doing everything, it's a new career, you got bills, you got everything else, so you're still working overtime in order to crank everything out, get stuff paid off, get, you know, new things, whatever it is that the guys are doing. Usually most of these idiots buy cars, but you know, so you're working there a lot, and it's a 12-hour day. So, you know, it got pretty depressing. I got real lucky too. I was at a facility that still had a lot of outside. I wasn't locked down inside for the entire time with them. Like, we still had to do perimeter checks and med runs and everything else. So you're still getting out, but for the most part, you're locked down in there, and it was almost like you're doing it too. I don't know how the corrections guys do it.
I was just thinking that. I'm like, it's almost like you're in jail too. Like, you're less the crime, but you're fucking stuck doing the same shit.
Yeah, and it's the exact same shit day in and day out. Like, it doesn't become interesting until, like, every once in a while, like, if you get to fight somebody or some, you know, do a cell extraction or something like that, that's about the only time it became interesting. But then, you know, you got like 2 minutes of fun, and now you're back to the same old bullshit.
Ugh.
So it was a very, very, very long 2.5 years. You know, most people, you're like, oh, it's, you know, like, say, like, if you're looking at your education, you're like, shit, I can do anything for 4 years or an enlistment term or whatever. Like, it's not that big of a deal. You're like, it's just 4. But that was very, very different than any of that. Like, you're locked there. You're done.
Dang. So, like, looking back, now that you've had a pretty significant amount of time away from that, what would be helpful? Like, you're an officer, you're fucking doing your time right alongside Billy Joe and shit, and, like, you're there for a couple years, and you're in that same kind of, like, system and routine. What does it look like to support officers to where, like, they want to show up?
I think if you could make it where you could start doing a lot more, like, field training, I think that would keep it interesting. You know, like, our department does it, like, when you're sworn and you're working corrections, our department doesn't let you come out unless you're already field trained. So prior to any of that field training, you're just sitting there doing the same shit over and over and over and over and over and over again. But if you had that ability to come out even like once a month or twice a month or whatever, and kind of work through that FTO program that way, I think that would absolutely be huge.
I like that.
As far as, you know, work is concerned in that very specific arena, I think that would be just phenomenal.
So when you were when you started working for the jail, how is that training different? Like, are they...
So we still do all the, like, your basic Sheriff's Academy stuff going through the academy, right? Because we are sworn. You're still sworn. You don't lose that when you go to work the jails. Now, as far as jail training goes, I think the corrections dudes do like 2 months of an academy where we do 6 plus a little bit nowadays. It's not that involved. You're basically a glorified babysitter. I mean, you're sitting there hitting buttons and you know, feeding people and giving them new clothes. Like, there's absolutely zero thought process to it.
Yeah, that feels like that would be a lot.
It was horrible.
My cousin is a CO, and her and her husband both. And they're like, come work for us. I was like, I don't know that my spirit is set up for that.
I couldn't do it. Like right now, you couldn't pay me enough to go back and work the jails.
Man, it just feels like such a dark place to hang out in all the time. Like,
It's super shitty.
how does being around that type of environment all the time, did you go in there kind of like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and then you left like super jaded?
I don't think I got jaded until working patrol for a while.
Really?
Yeah, because like at least for the jail, right? Like you're starting their career, so everything was new. So for like the first 6 months, it was cool. It was like whatever, and then after those 6 months, it was just kind of like, well, shit, whatever. It was more something to do until I could get to the point to do what I actually wanted to do, if that makes sense. Like you're just buying time. Like it didn't matter. Nobody cared. At least I didn't. I think that was a pretty pervasive attitude through most of the swarm guys.
So you were there for a couple years, and then you went into patrol.
Correct.
And so tell me about patrol. What was that like? How long were you on patrol for?
Well, I did patrol for the last 12 years, and then for the last 8 months, I've been on special teams. So I love patrol. I absolutely love it. It's something new, a little bit different every day, right? Usually there's always that persistent same old people that you're always going to. You know, you walk into the house and you're like, shit, Bob, what are you doing this time? You know, like shut up and go to your room or whatever it is. But but it's different every day. You know, so that keeps me engaged. That keeps, you know, that ADD or whatever it is that you want to call it going. So you're not doing the exact same crap all the time. So it's still new, different, and interesting.
What's your favorite thing to do when you're patrolling?
To do, like, as far as like enforcement or
like, what kind of calls do you like doing?
I like the exciting ones. I think we all do. I mean, I think everybody who does this for the most part, most of these guys, you know, are type A. They're go getting. They're wanting to chase that tone. They're wanting to, you know, do bad shit to bad people. So anytime there's a tone where it sounds interesting, or, you know, you might get in a fight, or, you know, point your gun at somebody for a little bit. That's always the funnest.
You're like, woo!
Like, you know, well, you get that adrenaline spike. You know, you get to drive fast, do cool shit. You know, all that kind of stuff. So that's the funnest, in my personal opinion.
How often do you do stuff like that?
A lot.
Really?
I've worked mostly shitholes. So like it's always bumping.
What does that mean?
Like we're always jamming. Like we're always going to calls. You know, like if you don't pull your gun a couple of times a day, then you're doing something wrong. You probably should.
What?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're not pulling your gun out a couple times a shift,
you're doing something wrong. Then you need to reevaluate your complacent attitude.
That's absolutely the kind of environment that you're in? Dang. So what? Like my brain just went like, how? So you've just gotten like used to it, and it's just like, yeah, whatever. It's just like a fucking Monday, not a big deal.
It's routine now. Like it's what you do. You know, like if you're not doing it, like just this week, like my partner and I have chased a couple stolen cars. We've had people at gunpoint. We've jumped fences. We've watched dog bites. You know, like we're bumping, we're moving.
So can you remember like the first time that you had a call where it was just like, holy shit, that just happened?
Oh yeah.
What was like your first?
It still happens. You know, like I still remember my first day sitting in the parking lot. You know, like that first day where you're in your car all by yourself, you don't have your FTO, and that just overwhelming feeling of, oh, holy shit, this is real now. Like, you're it. You know, I hit the streets at, when did I hit the streets? 23? When I was 23 years old, 24 years old. So now, like, you're the man.
That feels like a lot. That feels like a lot of. It feels like a lot of power. Do you feel a lot of power?
I wouldn't say power, just a lot of responsibility, because you got to do the right shit all the time. It's not, I personally don't see it as power. Yeah. I guess, that's absolutely there, but it's more responsibility. Like, you got to make the right decisions. The power, is something that can just easily be stripped away if you screw the pooch. Like, if you screw up and you do the wrong things, like, you're done.
How often are you worried about doing the wrong things?
That's not something I worry about. It's honestly not. I think, like, if you get so wrapped up in doing the wrong, like, you should have confidence in yourself, right? You know your job, you know what's wrong, you know what's right. It's not that hard. At least I don't think it is.
What type of how did they set you up for, because I'm guessing that type of activity is sort of going to be more specific to, like you said, kind of like shitholes or just like more violent areas, right? So what did the training look like? We're just like, all right, man, this is the beat we work. This is what it's like. How did that conversation happen?
I don't remember like a ton of conversations like that. Like, I know, like, my first FTO, and he was amazing, and I love that man to death. But it was more of, get your ass in the car, we're going out, this is how we handle shit while we're doing it. There wasn't a whole lot of conversation per se about, like, running through it. That happened, later, because I had him again for fourth phase.
What's that?
It's the finish. So in our FTO time is 4 months. So, the first month, phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. And when I did it, your first phase FTO was your fourth phase FTO. So you got the same guy all over again. Oh, okay. Just to kind of see like where you progressed, how much better you are compared to first phase, where you have your head on tight and right, and you're locked on and good to go.
Oh, I like that.
I like it a lot too. We've kind of gotten away from that, and I don't necessarily agree with that, but it is what it is. That's above my pay grade.
How did you, okay, so you're on patrol and you start responding to these calls that are like really intense, like shit is popping. How are you taught to sort of like recoup from that and show up the next day? Or how were you shown like how to handle or process that stuff?
Oh, we don't cover that.
Okay.
We don't cover that. That's not something we, like, any of us really talk about ever. Like, when I went through all that, like, it's your job, like, shut up and handle it. Like, you might get, like, after everything's done and the dust settles, like, one of your buddies looks over and is like, you good, bro? Yeah, we're good. Okay, cool, whatever. Pushing on to the next. Like, and that's about it.
Can you remember? It's still so bonkers to me. Like, I know that's like your guys' normal, but it's still so bonkers to me that like for the longest time it was like that, but also that still it's like that.
Just so the department's finally coming around. We're getting a lot better about that. I would say within the last 6 months, 8 months. When we got a new sheriff, and that was huge. So he's actually starting to focus on that kind of stuff and make that more of the norm. Doing like when we have a critical incident, like the debrief, and then the debrief with the psych docs and shit.
Is there anything that's happening preemptively? So a lot of that stuff is like post-care, right? Like something happened that was really rough. Now let's like go in, let's take a look at it. Let's see how you're doing, whatever. Is there any like precautionary stuff saying, hey, you are working in this area. This is super, super like busy. You're going to experience this, this, and this. This is how it might impact you. This is how you deal with it.
No, I remember like a little blip in the academy where they're like, make sure you have friends outside of work. Make sure, that you're still engaging in the activities you engaged in, prior to coming to the job and everything like that. But as far as I remember, that was pretty much it. You know, usually, right? Like, so usually with our stuff, it's all, you know, it's always after the fact. We're not very good at, you know, proactive shit.
Which is seriously, dude, it's so fucking crazy that you say that, because there's not a better group of people that is more prepared for the shit that could go wrong than police officers. You guys have done so much training, and like you're always like on top of training, you're always ready, like you're hyper vigilant, you're all these things for like these big what ifs, but not like the absolutely it's going to happen. You are going to have PTSD because of this job. You're going to experience like it.
It is what it is.
It's so
I think
crazy.
a lot of agencies are getting a lot better about it. I absolutely think, you know, we on patrol, not so much this station, but prior to this station, we would always do choir practice. That's what we call it, right? So when you're hanging out after shift, somebody gets off a little bit early, runs out, grabs 12-pack of beers, or somebody brings the barbecue, and then you all hang out after work, drink a beer, bullshit. And, you know, that was probably the closest we would get to any kind of, like, mental health stuff, I think, you know, like sitting there bullshitting about it or, you know, talking about it after the fact. But
I like that. I think that that's very important. And I think a lot of people who are cops do that. And I think that that's good that you guys, I mean, it's a little bit different now because quarantining and some people are weird about that, but actually none of my cop friends are like, zero of my cop friends are quarantining. None of them.
Nobody cares about that shit.
No one cares.
I'm pretty sure most of us, after walking into a lot of the houses and dealing with the people that we deal with, are probably immune to most of that shit.
That's what my guy said. He's like, do you know how, because I was like, are you using antibacterial or are you washing? He's like, I wash my hands so many times during a shift because people are fucking gross.
Yeah, people are foul. So I think most of us still just, it's standard for us to be like, ew, you're gross. Okay. You know, you're like, I don't want to touch this dirty ass hobo. You know, we'll glove up and do all that. You know, not that the hobos have, you know, the market cornered for dirtiness, but.
So I was in New England. I was at a narcotics conference, and it's super late. It's like 1:00 in the morning. We've been drinking all night, like hanging out, whatever. And we're walking through this, like these guys that I'd never met before, and. You know, we're hanging out, whatever, and we walk down, like, this road that's, like, cobblestone, fucking Rhode Island and shit, old from, like, the 1500s. We're walking, and I hear this saxophone. I'm like, what is that sound? And I, like, stroll over, and I get this homeless guy to play me a song, and it was so amazing. And so after he's finished, I give him this hug, and I walk away, and all of my new friends, all my cop buddies are like, don't you ever hug a homeless person. I was like, but he probably doesn't get hugged a lot. And they're like, right. And he just like listed all these reasons of like why they're dirty.
Yeah, that's gross. Super gross.
It was a memorable hug. He definitely was barefoot.
I'm sure.
And his feet looked like they were like crustaceans, but it was...
It's always the smell. It's always the smell.
See, that's not like in my world. Like in my world, I don't experience that stuff, right? So you guys are like ready and you're like, I know how this is going to go. Like this, no. He probably has some kind of like prison shank in his hair. He's going to stab you. And I'm like, oh, I thought I just wanted to be friends.
No.
It's fine.
No.
It's fine.
He's going to stab you and take your shit.
So you were talking about witnessing like all kinds of stuff working in patrol. How have you been able to handle that kind of stress, right? That's a lot different stress than having an accounting job. What does that look like for you to...
So there's always, you know, copious amounts of beer drinking.
Mm-hmm.
You know, or you'll you know, or you hang out with the boys and you beer drink, and you know, you get, for lack of a better better term, you get fucked up, and then the next day you wake up, you're a little hungover, and sort that out and keep going.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like, find a hobby. You know, you go fishing, go camping, you know, do something quiet away from all this shit. You know.
Do a lot of people around you have kind of like rhythms and routines that are similar to that?
Yes, I would say most of us do that kind of stuff. You know,
I think that that's really important to have kind of like that alone time. Okay, so we did the one-on-one.
Oh, yep.
And you don't know how to work technology.
I don't know how to work this fucking stupid thing, but yeah, no, we're back. Sorry.
Okay, so we did our one-on-one session, and my hope is that that this could be a resource that officers can use like as an anonymous way to kind of like deal with stress and sort of like manage it and learn to manage it in a way that's specific to the things that you're experiencing. So I want to ask you a little bit about what that was like doing this session with me. Like, what did you think it was going to be? Did you know anything about it? And what was it like?
I wasn't sure, right? Like, I don't usually, like, you know, that's not something we do. I think you definitely have to be open for it in order to get anything out of it, right? Just like anything else, you got to come in with the open mind and have that attitude of like, okay, this absolutely potentially, you know, absolutely be worthwhile. In order to make it worthwhile, like you have to want it. You know, it was very different. I didn't expect for it to be the way it went, but I absolutely think it absolutely could be very helpful. You know, especially in the long term, right? This isn't like a one and done thing. Like you have to upkeep it just like you maintain everything else.
Yeah, I want this to be sort of like that form of training that you guys aren't getting yet, right? Like my goal is to be in the academies, to have that preemptive touch that says, this is what you're going to go through. This is how you manage that so that it doesn't become this like giant monster that you have to deal with 7 to 12 years into your career. But as it stands right now, like you said, everything is like post-care. So most of the clients that I work with are already existing officers, and we're dealing with stuff that's been a part of like their long-standing career. So, and which can be really discouraging because like once you've had like a career of shit and you've had enough time thinking a certain way, it's a long process to undo that.
Oh yeah, you're not going to change that in a short period of time, I don't think. Again, like you have to be willing though. Like that's always the key with any of this stuff. Like you have to be willing to actively do it, learn, pay the fuck attention, and realize what it is that you have going on in order to make it worthwhile.
I feel like your body also makes you super aware of like the shit that you need to deal with and like when you need to deal with it. You know what I mean? Like you can be, so in a session I ask you, so I give you a list of different symptoms, right? And then I'm like, is there one of those symptoms that you're consciously aware of that your body has been going, hey, we need to fucking deal with this. It's time. It's fucking time. We're not doing this anymore. It's not helpful. Like it's, your body almost makes you deal with shit when it's time.
Oh, it'll absolutely make it known. It'll tell you.
Like what are some of the ways that your body's been like, this is a fucking problem. This is affecting us. This is what we're doing it.
Well, at least for me, like when it's done, like, you know, like you get the knots everywhere, you know, you hurt constantly, like either like between your shoulder blades where it's not always, you know, but that could just be the ear, you know, your lower back. Sometimes I just get freaking exhausted. Like I'm just done. I'm over it, you know, and that's definitely you telling you to knock off your shit, take a day, slow it the fuck down, you know, and come back around to, you know, at least better than where you were. Maybe not all the way back to good, but at least better than where you were in order to keep pushing.
I think it's really important to be listening to your body. I don't think that there is enough practice with doing that because we're always distracted. Like there's always something that we have to deal with or something that we're thinking about, and it doesn't leave us time to be like, what the fuck do I need right now?
No, you just keep going.
So what does that look like for you? Do you have like this, I don't want to say like a routine, but like, is there, like, how do you recognize that there's something that you need to deal with and then start dealing with it?
Usually it's the fatigue, it's the exhaustion, just like that whole feeling of I'm fucking done. I can't do this shit again today. You know, or just like I'm over it. You know, that's when I'm like, okay, like we definitely need to take a day or two and sort this shit out, relax, calm down, and then come back around.
So yeah, you mentioned that you like that your go-to response is like to just kind of like detach and disconnect. Right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I shut down.
And I was explaining that the brain works in one of two ways. Like you take two routes. You can either disconnect or disengage from what's happening in front of you, or you can like hyper engage and be like trying to control everything. You fucking respond really emotionally. You're really reactive and like implosive or explosive or whatever. So I think it's important to disengage and kind of take a step back from like what you're experiencing and what is happening around you. But I think without having the tools and the resources to like deal with your shit in that sort of space, nothing happens, right? So you're taking time away, and it can be really easy to just stew in the frustration or stew in anger. Like, so you're just, nothing is happening. Like people that have time off, whether it's forced or not, or after an incident, you're taking time off, but you're not being given like the resources to calm yourself down, to regulate yourself, to think logically about the situation, or to kind of let things go. You just build them up more. Would you say that that's your experience as well? That's mine.
I would agree with that one. Absolutely. I would agree with that. Right? Because like we don't talk about that kind of stuff. We don't have any training in that. Nobody really covers that per se. So you're kind of left to figure that shit out on your own, you know. And it's not like we're pros at that. So then you're like, yeah, screw it, I'm good. And you don't realize that, well, maybe you're not quite. You think you are.
You're not right? Like impervious to being a human.
Yeah, like you have that idea of like, all right, screw it, I'm good. And then, you know, like we talked about, you know, a lot of times, like sometimes then like you'll blow up over stupid shit for, you know, in retrospect, when you look back on it, you're like, why in the hell did I get so pissed off and blow up over that kind of shit, or, you know, or whatever it is, whatever that reaction is or something. So then like, that's kind of, you realize that you're not quite good. Yeah. You thought you were, but you're not quite there.
And then when you're in that place of like, oh shit, I just fucking blew up again, and now I have to fucking deal with all the shit that I created, this fucking shitstorm. I sent that fucking email to my boss, or I responded the same way, like, I shouldn't have sent that text to my sergeant. Whatever that thing is, it then creates this other, like, it perpetuates the cycle, because then you feel like regret or guilt or shame or whatever associated with your behavior, because now that you're feeling logical and calm, you realize that that's not how you wanted to react. Like, that's not helpful.
No, absolutely. You know, and without a doubt. And, you know, I can personally think of a number, you know, one of which was pretty recent, where I kind of lost my shit, and it was probably over than what it should have been. It was like, in my mind, it was still justified. You know, because there were some safety issues and going on, but that was kind of more of a lack of communication throughout the team. But it still aggravated the ever-living hell out of me, and I went the fuck off. Yeah. You know, and two, like, maybe it's not just like the work shit that catches it, right? Like, we all have personal lives, and we always, you know, we all have significant others, and we're all doing that kind of stuff. And then unfortunately, sometimes, like, they're catching the brunt.
Dude.
You know? Like, I've blown up over stupid ass shit, you know, especially in retrospect, you know, and she's kind of gotten the brunt of it for no reason.
Does she understand, like, I have found that not a lot, in the same way that officers haven't had a lot of the training to understand why their bodies are responding the way that they are. A lot of spouses are in that same boat. So, right, they don't have like the why. Like you have the why. You know what your day has been like. You know what stops you've gone to. You know what kind of bullshit's coming down the line. You know all the reasons why all that stuff is built up and you've gotten to that place. But spouses, significant others, kids don't have that same context, and they just get the bam. So like, have you had any kind of like sit downs? Have you like explained that at all? Have you ever like, has that ever been a conversation and like helping them understand why?
I don't think we've ever directly talked about it per se.
Are you looking at her right now?
I'm looking at her right now, but she's off sitting in the pool. Oh, okay. I got real lucky, and she's actually a trauma nurse.
Okay, so she's exposed to shit.
She has a decent, she's got a good understanding. Obviously, like it's still two different things, right? But like you can still get that adrenaline spike that you're seeing that bad shit at work and everything like that. So there's still a relative understanding, but everybody obviously deals with all that shit in their own way, right? So it can still be confusing for, even if somebody does have an idea, like it's still, kind of like a what the fuck moment for somebody else, even if they do have an idea, because maybe that's not how they would react. And, I'll admit, I don't do a very good job talking about that shit.
Yeah, like none of us do.
It's not something we do at all. Let's be honest with that. So, we both kind of have that understanding. Like if you're kind of disengaged and real quiet at home, the day's been kind of shitty, and just let it be for a little bit.
One of my buddies was like, there needs to be some kind of training for people that want to like marry police officers.
Well, I think, and there's a couple books out there. I think, there's that emotional survivability for law enforcement. That's a good one. I think, we were all kind of told about it in the academy, so I haven't read that shit since 2006. So it might behoove us to kind of go back over that, every once in a while, and have, your other read that shit, because I think it does a good job of kind of spelling out the idea of what happens and why we do what we do sometimes.
Yeah, and I think like you hit it on the head too. You being lucky that she kind of experiences a lot of that too, is she, being in that type of work, being a first responder, you were more apt to experience those symptoms because of the frequency in which you encounter gnarly shit. You know what I mean? It's
every day.
Right. Like the highest point of my day is when my 6-year-old is screaming and she's, like that's controllable. That's doable. Right.
Right. I mean, not every day, but it's still more frequent than others, but yeah.
Okay. So in this session, we also did, what else did we do? So we talked about symptoms, ones that are really common. And then we did some self-regulation. We did breathing. Okay, so breathing is not an unfamiliar thing to most of the officers that I talk with. They're like, yeah, I've heard of like tactical breathing or box breathing, whatever. What was your introduction to breath work type of stuff?
Between us or through work prior to today?
Correct, prior to today.
Prior to today. Like we've all talked about it, right? Like, so there's, I think most of us call it combat breathing or whatever it is that you want to call it. It's still that guy from Attic. You gotta make it cool, man, so it sounds badass, so people listen. But it's still, no matter what you call it, that exercise, that focused breathing, that shit's still the same. You're making the conscious effort to breathe through your diaphragm, slow your shit down, which in turn slows everything else down and lets you kind of refocus a little bit more. The first time I ever did it was rolling code to a man with a gun, right? So like, and it was still, I think I was still on training with that one. Yeah, I was still on training with that one. So you're like, you got that adrenaline, you're like, hell yeah, it's like your first wicked awesome code run. You're like, you're bouncing, like your legs freaking bouncing in the car, you know, because you got all the adrenaline, you're dumping. And that definitely helped to slow everything down, right? Because when if it's not something you do all the time, or, you know, whatever it is, that code run, we all talk about it, we all know it, that the tunnel vision, that everything kind of slows down a little bit, and you do stupid shit. So unless you're going to really take time to refocus and redirect some of that energy while you're doing something as mundane as driving, you know, you're gonna fuck up. So like it was huge, you know. Same thing like on a critical incident, or like if you're, you know, doing whatever, you need to be able to force yourself to take those like 5-10 seconds and slow your shit down, like you were saying, like when you slow it down and you can refocus it, because when you're dumping, you're having that disconnect, that frontal thing or whatever that you were talking about. Like you have that disconnect, and we can't afford to allow that to happen.
You move into you stop when you go into like a really intense situation, or like a fight or flight response. You no longer become like a thinking, like, well, you are thinking, right? But like your aptitude is to not become like this thinking human. You become like a feeling human. So you are stuck in all of your emotions and senses, your feeling sensations, and that is how you are like judging what you need to do, or you're placing judgment on what's happening, instead of you realizing that you're not your body, you're not your adrenaline, you're not like your anxious feeling. You're a very calm and collected person who's well-trained, who can diffuse a situation or neutralize evil, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, because we can't allow ourselves to do that. Like you have to be able to take that deep breath and actively think about what the hell's going on in your reaction.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that the private sessions will help officers remember the importance of practicing that like intentional breathing when they're not in need of doing it. Like you don't just like get into like a really fucked up situation. You're like, oh, I need to breathe. Like,
right.
No, make
it habitual. Make it so it's almost like an automatic response to that stress and all the other shit.
Right.
So you don't have to think about it, so you can think about other things and keep pushing.
That's fucking right. That is so good that you brought that up, because, okay, so having the ability to be present and understand your surroundings and having awareness of your place in time is something that you lose when you're in like these intense situations. Like you forget about all of the other moving parts to the situations happening. Like you forget what the fuck you're doing. So like, tell me more. That's why I talk so much. So like when we do like movement things, okay, so when we were doing the movement portion, and I'm like, reach really energetically through your fingertips this direction, and then send your head that direction, or press here, or when you lose your ability to have full body awareness when you're in a state of being triggered or being like escalated emotionally. You just do. And if you can't have proper body awareness, then can you think about, hey, I'm rolling around with this, I'm getting into a fight with this person. Oh, here's where my taser is, or here's where my arm is and I can move that. Or here, like you lose the ability to see outside of what you're feeling.
Yeah. You have to be absolutely totally aware of where all your shit is and what's going on around you too. Like you can't just go with that gut instinct and just solely focus on that one aspect. Like we can't do that. Like you absolutely have to be aware. Like you can have somebody else walk up, dude can grab some of like the other shit off your belt or your vest or whatever it is, wherever you keep your gear. So you have to still have that connection to everything else. You can't lose that.
So we did what's called EFT in the session as well, which is always really unusual for even myself. When I do it, I'm like, this is fucking weird. So EFT is the emotional freedom technique, which is it's similar to acupuncture in that like you have like these meridian points that are along your body that have like energy points, which it all sounds very like woo woo, but essentially it's the concept that every idea that pops into your brain, because your brain is a computer, it then creates this universe of action based off of that thought. Right? So if you have a thought that's constantly swirling in your mind that's like, the world is going to end, the world is going to end, the world is going to end, your brain then creates all of these scenarios based off of that thing that you're telling yourself. The world is going to end. Okay, so if the world's going to end, I got to do this, I got to do that. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if I do this? What happens? And you create all of these fucking, like all this shit, which keeps you in your brain. But then, so with the EFT, we tap these certain points on the body multiple times, and we repeat a statement. And that statement is, it can be anything. It can be like, I'm worried about losing my job. I'm worried about my spouse leaving me. I'm worried about hurting someone. Whatever that thing is, we repeat it, and then we tap at the same time to sort of like, kind of like break up the brain's ability to attach onto an idea. What did you think about it?
I think that's definitely the one where it's like you better have the open mind and be willing to try shit out, because it was definitely odd. You know, like it was definitely different. You know, I can see and understand why it's useful and where it comes into play, without a doubt. Again, you know, keeping that open mind with it, because it's not something you would think about doing, but once you explain it and you go over it a couple of times, and then once you do it, I can definitely see where it's beneficial.
And then you become more aware of your thoughts, right? The idea, like with meditation, with mindfulness, it's to become observant of your thoughts rather than like acting on the thoughts, or rather than becoming the thoughts. So by identifying a statement that you've been obsessing over, you become more aware of your body's, like, that your brain wants to keep thinking about it. You begin to like realize that. And then once you can realize, like anything that you can become aware of, you can change.
Absolutely.
The problem is like,
Most of us aren't aware.
Yeah, we're not super self-aware people. Like this is like a pretty new, like in terms of like evolution and like mankind, think about in the last 10 years, how much like conversation about like mental health in your job, how much it's changed, or even in the last 5 years.
I was going to say, especially in the last 5 years, I would say there's been a huge focus on mental health, because it's something we deal with all the time. Maybe not necessarily in ourselves, but absolutely out in the public. So
I always think it interesting that it's important for officers to receive training on how to de-escalate people, like suspects or calls that you go to. You understand, like when you show up to a call and the fucking person, like people are like arguing, they're going at it, you're like, calm down. Like you know all of these things and you're learning all these things, but they're all being like focused on other people. It's not like this, oh, let's become self-aware. It's let's be aware of others.
Yeah, and it's always been that way, right? Even pre all this formalized training shit that we're doing now for it, it's always been something that I think law enforcement's always done to begin with. But again, there's, like you say, there's never been the internal focus.
Okay, and then the last part of our session is, oh wait, no, we also moved a lot. We did. So you told me what was a lot of
stretches.
Yeah. We did some stretching, and that's all geared towards like the stuff that is tight on you, like, and the sessions, that was like the intro. So there's a lot more talking and kind of explaining. So I went ahead and I did like all the movements, but typically the movements on the first session are a little bit shorter because we're talking. But so there's a movement portion, and then we end the session with my favorite fucking part, which is the positive self-talk.
Right.
So positive self-talk is just that, right? Where there's an endless supply of fucked up shit that our brain can come up with.
Absolutely.
Like that shit's on tap. But the amount of good shit that's coming in can sort of dwindle. The things that we surround ourselves with can tend to mimic our, kind of like those negative environments. So I think it's really important to like remind ourselves of some of the good shit that we're about too, right? Like we know all of our fuck shit, but we don't know the good stuff.
For sure.
Do you do positive self-talk?
No. Not prior to today.
At all, ever? You're never like, man, Deputy Andy, you did a great fucking job today.
You're like, hell yeah, I'm fucking amazing. I'm so cool. I mean, yeah, like everybody knuckles and shit like that, but like, I don't know, like if you really, really think about it, it's just, I don't know, it's more an aspect of, yeah, we did a good job today. All right, keep going. Like you did your job. You did what you're supposed to do. There's no, I mean, I'm sure like you have to have that attitude of hell yeah, I'm a badass in order to do it, without a doubt. But it's not like you're sitting not like we did while we're sitting there like talking about and actually saying it for the most part.
It's such a missed opportunity to become a better police officer. Like it's a little bit weird for sure. I think especially if you're not used to it, it's definitely something that's more popular in like softer environments. I don't know how else to say that, right? Like you guys,
absolutely.
Like you guys are so fucking tough. You guys are the toughest group of people that I haven't spent a lot of time around military, so maybe military is similar, but you guys are some of the most toughest, triumphant, resilient, strong, brave individuals that I've ever met in my life. But then it's like, but you don't remind yourself of that. Like all the reasons that you get frustrated at your job and the reasons that you feel complacent or like jaded is because you started your job wanting to make such a huge difference, and because you have a good heart and because you are a good person, and the shit actually should affect you. So with the positive self-talk, it's you being able to remind yourself of all that shit that's important, right? Like you can't just like berate a child and then expect them to like do better, right? They can be better and they can like achieve everything that you want them to achieve, but they're not going to like make it their own and like become whatever that looks like, right? So you could be like the next, whatever kind of police officer you want to be, whatever kind of department or task force that you want to be a part of, you can miss your potential and your ability to get there by not believing that you can fucking do it and that you're worth doing it and that you're a good person.
Absolutely.
So one of the positive self-talk points that we went over was my mind is strong. That's so big. To be able to show up on scene to something that's like really chaotic and to know how to diffuse a situation or how to like de-escalate it and bring it down to where like a resolution can be made, that's the ability to have a strong mind. Like that's huge. Okay, so we did the one-on-one. When you and I first kind of had like our little introduction, you said that you were there for the San Bernardino guy, right? No. What did you say?
No, I wasn't there at the San Bernardino one. I was at the that CHP one on the overpass down over off of Box Springs in Moreno Valley.
Will you tell me about that one?
Where the Chippy did the car stop, the CHP, the California Highway Patrol. The Chippy did a stop. some things went wrong, obviously, right? I wasn't there to get the totality of that. So, but yeah, he ended up dying. And then my other buddy ended up damn near losing his leg.
I don't know what you're talking about at all.
So, oh, really? Sorry. So,
no, I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm sure other people are like, oh yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
So, yeah, it was a pretty big incident out here. It was definitely huge, right? Like we really, anytime one of the guys dies, he ended up taking a 5.56 round to the face, among other multiple wounds. He died on scene. Well, technically he died at the hospital, but at least in my opinion, watching him get loaded into the helicopter, just watching his body and everything like that, I'm pretty sure he was already gone.
What was the call?
He did a self-initiated traffic stop. I think it was like some expired registration or, whatever myriad of, stupid shit chippies pull people over for. And then I guess dude had been on a meth bender for a minute and was having a bad day and decided to pull a rifle out of the car and start engaging both the CHP guys that were there. There was some balls dropped, at least in my personal opinion. Just looking at it, again from my own perspective of the incident, right, without the whole totality of everything. So yeah, he ended up engaging them. Three of them actually got shot. The initial officer died. His backup just got shot to shit. He took multiple rounds through his legs. He was able to kind of pull himself behind his SUV and continue to engage the suspect, which is what kept him alive, because the guy was trying to come around the car and finish him off. Luckily for him, not luckily, I mean, that's just, good planning on his fucking part. He had multiple magazines on him for his handgun, and every time the bad guy'd come around the car, he put 2 or 3 more rounds, at the guy, forcing the guy to retreat.
Yeah.
He went through 5 magazines.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Yeah, he went through 5 mags before the boys showed up.
I'm like, where's backup here?
That's where I say some of the ball got dropped.
Was this like a rural area?
No, absolutely not. It was right between Riverside, the city of Riverside, and the city of Moreno Valley. Chippies, from my understanding of it, don't always put out stops or do a good job about. I'm not sure how that works on their end. So, I mean, I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that one. We got it as an 1111, which is an emergency, run to whatever, backup run. Because CHP was in a gunfight. That's literally what the fucking call said, was in a gunfight. That should have been an automatic 1199, kind of like that, oh, holy shit. The boys are in a gunfight, and everybody and their mother should have been going. Right. Like, immediately. But, like I said, in my personal opinion, some balls were dropped on that one. So Moreno Valley guys ended up getting there first. They engaged him for a while, and, eventually either Moval or Riverside, I'm not sure specifically who got there first, but they ended up putting the dude down. And then, yeah. So
you watched the guy. So did you know the guy or no?
I didn't know the guy who died. I'd seen him around, so it's not like I knew him. The guy that got his leg shot to shit, yeah, we've been on some calls, and he worked that area, so, knew him pretty decently as far as, like, work's concerned and stuff. It's not like we'd hung out and drank beers on the weekend or anything, but, that professional relationship was absolutely there. One of the MoFal trainees did just an absolute phenomenal job, and when he got there, sucked him into the back of the unit, started applying tourniquets, and they rolled his ass to the hospital, which is what saved his life. And then some other chippy took, like, some ricochet in the leg or whatever, but, I mean, that whole thing was was pretty nuts. By the time I got there, they were putting the last couple rounds into the dude as I was coming up the overpass, so I kind of missed that one. But
so, how long had you been working the streets when that happened?
13, 12, okay. 13 years.
So this was for sure not the first time that you've seen some dude being lit up.
No, not my first rodeo on that one.
Was that one of the more larger or grander scale types of things where there's a helicopter involved?
I've seen that shit a bunch. I think that's the first time where one of our guys had gotten hurt.
When you leave that scene, what is that like sitting in your patrol car as you drive away from something like that?
Well, that day, that shit, the being able to drive away and take a deep breath by yourself didn't happen for fucking hours. Once I got on scene, I ended up having to talk to and kind of corral the suspect's wife and kids who had showed up. And then sit on them at the hospital for hours and hours and hours. And then, there was still shit to be done past that. So, that was a long day, and then I still wasn't in the car by myself. So definitely, once I got home, there was just kind of that, oh, holy shit. It's always you always run it through, what if? You could have been, drive faster, fucking somebody hadn't dropped the ball, that shit had gone out over the air a lot faster because we're right next fucking door. All that what if.
What ifs are so big. They have so much power. That's the universe. That's the thing that the EFT is trying to help you break up, is your brain goes into these what if, catastrophizing.
Absolutely. And then you just kind of end up beating yourself down over that shit when, you really kind of have to take that deep breath and realize, man, that shit's out of your control. Which is, I think, is very, very hard for us as a general whole, right? Because we control pretty much everything.
That's
throughout
super true.
The entire day, right? That's what we do. We walk into something and nope, this is our shit now. Y'all are doing what I say, how I say, when I say, and everything like that. We always have that element of control throughout our entire day, no matter what. And then shit like that happens, and it's just fuck. You really don't control a goddamn thing.
I was gonna say, so then does it sort of make all of that sort of compiling in? We're just well, fuck. I really don't. Is that where the what ifs come in, where you realize that you don't have control?
There's a lot of the what ifs that come through that, but at the same time, there's all the training and everything like that. There's still a lot of shit that went wrong with that. It definitely refocuses that absolutely complacency kills, and you got to be. You have to. So it reinforces that hypervigilance almost. Right, that fucking on the ball.
You've got to be fucking ready. You've got to be ready, because this isn't going to happen, man. That's how fucking fast and amazing our brains are, that we can experience something and within the same day, our brain is already thinking of the ways that it can keep ourselves safe.
Absolutely.
That's beautiful. It's scary because it happens automatically and we don't really get a lot of say in it unless we're aware that we're doing it. But that's so powerful that our brain is this is how we stay alive.
No, for sure. For sure.
So, as you've kind of gone through these calls repetitively, has there been something that somebody has taught you or something that you've stumbled upon that's been effective for you in I know that we talked about breath, right? When you're going to a call or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But is there something that somebody taught you where you're just oh, it's super important? This has been helpful, or this way of thinking has been helpful?
As far as actually doing that kind of stuff, right? When you're rolling hot or you're on something that's pretty fucking dynamic. The breathing, I think, is huge. right? Like I was, you know, like when you get the 5-second pause or whatever, or before you hit the door or whatever it is, you know, you take that couple deep breaths, slow the shit down, you know, and focus. And then, I mean, as far as like outside of actually doing that kind of shit, you know, I would say the biggest thing would be to not just make work your whole world, for lack of a better term. Like we all do it still, you know what I mean? Like it's only like we all do it. We hang out with each other, we talk about work, we drink beer together, you know, the families hang out together, everybody does that shit constantly, right? So you're always in it. And I would definitely say get away from that to a point. Is huge, right? Because then you're always, it's always there. Then you're always talking about shit. You're always reliving shit. It's always replaying through your head. Like, knock that shit off and go do something that has nothing to fucking do with work, not even remotely.
You mentioned your enjoyment of fishing, to which I was like, fuck that. That's way too quiet and like serene for me. But you enjoy it.
Yes, I love it.
But you said something about like the act of like fishing. Like, what did you say?
So I always go kayak fishing, right? So you're burning, you know, you're doing something, you know, physical. I mean, it's not like super strenuous, you know, you're not getting retarded with that shit, but you have that repetitive motion, you have the solitude, you have that, for me, you know, that escape where you can shut everything down, you know, and just kind of not have to think about shit, because you do have, you know, between the paddling, the casting and everything like that, it's that escape, it's that disconnect, but you're still doing shit.
Yeah. That, I like that you do that. I think that that's really, really important. And when you're able to take that time away from whatever is happening and you're able to get that kind of like mental space, that's the point in which you can begin to like observe the thoughts instead of like being so reactive to them. You can learn to just sort of like, oh, okay, I'm thinking about that. No action required.
Yep.
Oh, I'm thinking about that. No action required. You're just thinking. You're just being a fucking human organism, just doing what you're built to do. You don't have to, you're not your thoughts. Your world is not your thoughts. You don't have to do it. One of the things you said earlier, which I thought was kind of like interesting, is I was like, it's so crazy to me that there's still no training. And you're like, it is what it is. So I want to ask you about that because I like it because it could be a statement of acceptance or it could be something else, but I think that's important. So I wanted to ask you, so do you find that you're able to accept, is it easy for you to accept the stupid shit that you have to do, whether that's like the type of calls that you have to go on, the type of procedures that are there, like the whatever, like, do you find it easy to accept how things are? Because I think that can be really tough for a lot of type A people who do want to control, who are fucking rowdy and fucking ready to fucking stand up and say what's on their mind, which is why they're police officers. That's why they fucking passed the academy. Is that hard to accept?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't, you know, like, shutting up is probably, I think, one of the harder things that we do, because we're not those people.
Oh,
at least I'm not. Like, it's super hard just to, you know, to shut the hell up and be like, all right, fine, whatever. You know, that's stupid hard.
You're not those kind of people. That is so fucking profound that you said that, because it's so true. Your police officers are not that guy.
Yeah, we're not those people. We don't.
You're not rolling over for shit. You're not. You need to fucking prove to me why I need to do this because I'm fucking right and you're not.
Yeah. Probably. Yeah.
I'm not gonna sugarcoat that.
Right, and like if we got something to say, then you know, chances are it's coming out. And, you know, especially if there's, you know, something behind it, then it's probably coming out fucking aggressively, you know.
So my guy, he works for Nevada Highway Patrol. And when he's fucking getting rowdy, when he's feeling rowdy, like he gets a text from whoever and he's just like, what the? And I'm like, whoa.
Yeah. It's always,
a lot of emotions.
We all know, like, it's always, you know, fuckity, fuck, and loud and animated.
But that's a really beautiful part of, like, who you are. Like, that's the part of you where...
It depends on who you ask.
Well, I mean, right. So, like, when I asked you in the beginning of the one-on-one is, like, is there something that you would like to have more control over? It's a good thing that you have that response to bullshit. It's such a good thing. It's such a good quality to possess. It's just a little bit not controlled all the time. But I think it's really good to note that, like, it's your refusal to accept injustice that is not allowing you to shut the fuck up right now. Yeah. It's so great. I mean, yeah, you need to learn how to shut the fuck up a little bit more, because that's usually when you end up kind of like crashing and sort of creating a lot of mess for yourself to clean up. But yeah, it is a good thing that you are willing to stand up and you are willing to be alone in your fight because you know that it's worth it.
Absolutely.
I love police officers. I really do. This has been like such a great experience getting to know just random people like you and I we've never met before.
Right. Yeah.
Never met.
Yeah.
But like this stuff is really cool to talk about because you're in California. The last guy that I interviewed is in Arizona. Like the situation is the same. You guys all experience the same stuff. The same type of officer is coming into the force because that type of mentality is what's necessary to show up to the shit that you're going to. Like, I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that policing would break my spirit. It would break me.
I don't know. It's what we do, though. I don't know.
I love it. Okay. Well, that is... I really appreciate you, again, taking up so much of your day. It's a Sunday. It's your day off. I really appreciate it. The one-on-ones, you guys, Deputy Andy did it, and he didn't die. Didn't die. He didn't explode. He didn't cry. Although crying is totally fine. I'm here for it. When was the last time you cried?
A while ago.
What's a while?
Fucking hot minute ago. I don't know.
That was the same definition.
Like
months?
It's been a while. I don't know.
Like months or years?
Years.
What? I cried yesterday. Multiple times.
Years? Yeah.
Dang. Okay, well, and he didn't start crying today, so.
Nope, didn't cry.
All right, Andy. Well, I appreciate you taking the time and talking to me about your career and some of the stuff that you've gone through. Tell your friends about the one-on-one sessions. This shit is super, super helpful, I think, in just giving you a couple extra resources. The sessions can go, you can have as many of them as you want or as little as you want, but it's about like finding things that work for you. If it doesn't work, cool. But if it's something that can help reduce the amount of stress that you guys feel, if it's something that can reduce the amount of suicides that are happening, let's fucking do it. Let's try it.
Absolutely.
All right, my friend. Well, it was great talking to you. It was very nice to meet you.
And you as well. It's been fun.
Take it easy with your non-quarantining.
Absolutely.
Wasn't that nice? Wasn't that a breath of fresh air? Thank you so much, Officer Andy, for being so gracious with your time, doing the one-on-one. That was awesome. And then talking about it afterwards, talking about your career in the Southern Cal, in the SoCal. Like I mentioned before, y'all, stay tuned to Instagram this week. We're going to be talking about anger and how you can better control it. We're going to help you understand a little bit more about it so you can be done with it already. Done with it. If you want to do an interview with yours truly on Controlling the Mind and the Machine podcast, you can. And I want to talk to you. That's the coincidence here. So send me an email to erica@tacmobility.net and we can get that set up because I want to talk about you. I want to talk about your experience. I want to help other people. We want to make a difference. We want to fucking change 2020. All right? Too many suicides have been happening. Too many. I think we're up to 60 for the year. Like that's, you know what I mean? That's significant. So stay tuned to this shit. Bookmark it. Freaking watch list it. Save it to your videos. Make some shit happen. All right, guys. Thanks for listening to Controlling the Mind and the Machine podcast. I'm your host, Erica Chadwick. I hope you guys have a super great week. Until next time, stay safe and stay sane. Talk to you soon.